Most people think the economy is broken. They're wrong. It's working exactly as designed. And that's the most terrifying part. Let me explain what I mean. My name is Ray Dalio. I've spent over 50 years studying markets, empires, and the rise and fall of wealth across history. I've managed money through crashes, booms, wars, and crises. And the one thing I can tell you with absolute certainty is this: nothing that is happening right now is an accident. Not the inflation, not the debt, not the political chaos, not the growing gap between the rich and everyone else. This is a machine, and it is running exactly on schedule. Most people look at the world today and see disorder. They see a system failing. They feel like something went wrong somewhere, like someone made a terrible mistake and now we're all paying for it. That feeling is understandable, but it's wrong. What you're witnessing is a cycle, one of the oldest, most predictable cycles in all of human history. I call it the big debt cycle. And every major empire, the Dutch, the British, the Romans, and yes, the Americans, has moved through it. Every single one. The cycle doesn't care about politics. It doesn't care about who's in power. It doesn't care about technology or innovation or how smart we think we are. It moves like a tide. Slow, inevitable, unstoppable. Unless you see it coming. Most people don't see it coming. Think of it like a clock. Every gear turns another gear. Every decision made yesterday becomes the constraint of tomorrow. Borrow too much today, you pay with pain tomorrow. Print too much money, you steal purchasing power from the future. Create too much inequality, you breathe the social tension that tears systems apart. The clock has been ticking for decades. Most people just stopped listening. Now here's what I need you to understand. The big debt cycle has 3 distinct stages. 3 chapters in a story that every empire writes, and very few survive intact. Stage 1 is the rise. Credit expands. Productivity grows. Living standards climb. Everyone feels like a genius. Assets go up. Debt feels manageable. The future looks bright. This is the golden age. America lived here for much of the 20th century. The post-war boom. The rise of the middle class. The dollar becoming the world's reserve currency. Optimism was not just a feeling, it was a fact. Stage 2 is the squeeze. This is where the debt becomes too heavy to carry. Growth slows. The gap between the wealthy and everyone else becomes a canyon. Governments can't balance the books, so they print money instead. They kick the can down the road. Prices rise. Wages stagnate. People feel the pressure, but can't name the source. Political anger grows. Social trust erodes. The center starts to crack. Stage 3 is the breaking point. Restructuring. Conflict. A new order rising from the rubble of the old one. This is when the machine resets. Violently, painfully, and without mercy for those who aren't paying attention. Now, here is the part I need you to sit with. We are in stage 2. Right now. Today. This is not a prediction. This is not a warning about some distant future. This is a diagnosis of the present moment. The symptoms are everywhere if you know what you're looking for. The U.S. national debt has crossed $34 trillion. Interest payments alone are consuming a larger share of the federal budget than at almost any point in modern history. The bottom 50% of Americans hold less than 3% of the nation's wealth. The top 1% hold more than a third. That gap is not a quirk. It is a signal. And here's what makes stage 2 so dangerous. It doesn't feel like a crisis. Not yet. It feels like friction. Like things are just harder than they used to be. Like you're working more and getting less. Like the rules of the game changed, but nobody told you. That's by design. Stage 2 is slow. It's a slow burn, not an explosion. It's the tide going out, inch by inch. Until one day you look down and realize the shore has completely disappeared. I've seen this before. In the data. In the history books. in the patterns that repeat across centuries and continents. The machine is not broken. It is finishing a cycle. And the only question that matters right now, is whether you are positioned inside that machine or underneath it. Because stage 2 has a destination. It always leads somewhere. And what comes next is not something most people are prepared for. So let me ask you this. If the system is working exactly as designed, who exactly is it designed to work for? Stage 2. The squeeze, you felt it before you could name it. That slow, creeping sense that something is off. Then no matter how hard you work, you're not getting ahead. That the life your parents had, the house, the stability, the predictability, feels like a distant dream you can't quite reach. That feeling is not weakness. It's not laziness. It's not in your head. It's stage 2. And once you understand what's actually happening, once you see the mechanism behind the pressure, you can never unsee it. Let me show you what stage 2 looks like from the inside. Governments in stage 2 face an impossible problem. They've made promises they can't keep. Pensions, health care, social programs, military spending. The bills keep coming. But the growth that was supposed to pay for all of it, that growth has slowed down. The engine is losing power. So what do? They don't cut spending. That's political suicide. They don't raise taxes enough to close the gap. That's economic poison. Instead, they do what every empire in stage 2 has done throughout history. They print money. It sounds simple, almost harmless. Just create more currency, cover the gap, buy more time, kick the can a little further down the road. But here's what printing money actually does. It's not free. Nothing is ever free. When you print more money, you dilute the value of every dollar already in existence. It's like watering down soup to feed more people. Eventually, it stops being soup. It becomes hot, expensive water. That dilution has a name. We call it inflation. And inflation is the cruelest tax of all, because it hits hardest the people who can least afford it. The wealthy have assets, stocks, real estate, hard assets that rise in value as the currency weakens. Inflation for them is almost irrelevant. Their wealth floats on top of it like oil on water. But the working class, the middle class, they hold cash. They hold savings accounts. They hold wages that don't rise as fast as prices. For them, inflation is not an inconvenience. It is a slow financial suffocation. This is the squeeze. And it is deliberate, not in the sense that someone in a dark room planned it, but in the sense that the system is structured to protect capital over labor. Always has been. The people who understand this get wealthier. The people who don't get squeezed. Now let me show you this pattern in history, because what is happening today is not new, not even close. Look at Weimar Germany in the early 1920s, a government drowning in war debt, a currency they printed into worthlessness. Citizens who went to bed with savings and woke up with paper, wheelbarrows of cash to buy a loaf of bread. That is not a metaphor. That is a documented historical fact. Look at 1930s America. The wealth gap of the Roaring '20s collapsed into the Great Depression. Unemployment hit 25%. Banks failed. Farms were repossessed. An entire generation was scarred permanently by financial trauma that shaped their relationship with money for the rest of their lives. Look at the Dutch Empire in the late 1700s, once the most powerful trading empire in the world. Reserve currency. Global dominance. Then debt. Overextension. Declining competitiveness. The British rose. The Dutch fell. A superpower became a footnote. The pattern is always the same. Stage 2 is always the same. And here is the most dangerous part of stage 2. The part that makes it so lethal, it feels normal. Think about a pot of water on a stove. You drop a frog in boiling water, it jumps out immediately. The shock is too great. The danger is obvious. But you put that same frog in cool water and slowly turn up the heat. It stays. It adjusts. It acclimates. It doesn't notice the temperature rising degree by degree until it's too late. That is stage 2. The heat is rising, slowly, steadily, and most people are not jumping. They're adjusting, cutting back on luxuries, taking on a little more debt, working a second job, telling themselves this is temporary, telling themselves it will get better. Meanwhile, the temperature keeps climbing. I see the data every day. Consumer debt in America is at record highs. Credit card delinquencies are rising. The personal savings rate has collapsed. Home affordability is at its worst level in decades, and yet the headlines say the economy is strong. The markets are up. Everything is fine. Does that sound familiar? It should, because that is exactly what they said in 1997, in 1998, in 2006, right before everything changed. And here is what concerns me most, not just the economics, the social fabric. When stage 2 deepens, when the squeeze becomes unbearable, people don't just get poor. They get angry. They look for someone to blame. Internally, that anger turns into political polarization. Externally, it turns into nationalism, into conflict, into the fracturing of alliances that took decades to build. We are seeing this now, everywhere, in every major democracy. The center is not holding, and history tells me, with brutal clarity, what comes after the center fails to hold. Stage 2 doesn't last forever. It never does. It builds, and builds, and builds, until the pressure becomes too great for the system to contain, until the can has been kicked so far down the road that there is no road left. And then comes stage 3, the breaking point, the reset, the moment when the old order cracks open, and something new, something painful, something most people are completely unprepared for, crawls out. So let me ask you the question that should keep you up at night. When stage 2 finally runs out of road, when the heat in that pot reaches its absolute limit, where will you be standing? Stage 3, and what you do now. History doesn't warn the unprepared. It buries them. That is not a metaphor. That is a fact written in the wreckage of every empire that came before us. And right now, at this precise moment in the cycle, you have something most people never get. A window. Not a big one. Not a comfortable one. But a window nonetheless. And what you do with it will determine which side of history you end up on. Let me tell you what stage 3 actually looks like, because most people imagine it as a single catastrophic moment. A crash. A bang. A day when everything falls apart at once. That's not how it works. Stage 3 is not a moment. It's a transition. A grinding, painful, years-long restructuring of the entire financial and geopolitical order. It's the moment when the debts that couldn't be paid aren't paid. When the promises that couldn't be kept are broken. When the currency that was printed into weakness is finally replaced or radically reformed. It is the reset button, and reset buttons, when they finally get pressed, are brutal. Think about what happened at the end of the British Empire's dominance. It didn't collapse overnight. It eroded. World War I. World War II. The Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944, where the U.S. dollar replaced the British pound as the world's reserve currency. The British didn't lose their empire in a day. They lost it across decades of slow decline, punctuated by sudden, irreversible moments of reckoning. That is stage 3, slow erosion. Then sudden rupture. And here is what those rupture moments look like in real terms. Currency. Devaluation. The money in your pocket buys less. Not gradually, like in stage 2, but sharply, suddenly. Overnight policy changes that wipe out savings denominated in the wrong currency. Debt restructuring. Governments renegotiate what they owe. Bondholders take haircuts. Pension promises get revised downward. The social contract, the unspoken agreement between a government and its people, gets rewritten, usually not in the people's favor. Geopolitical realignment. The world order shifts. New powers rise. Old alliances fracture. Trade routes change. The rules of global commerce get rewritten by whoever has the most leverage at the table. Right now, that competition is already underway. Between the U.S. dollar system and the rising challenge from China, from BRICS nations, from the slow but unmistakable push toward a multipolar world, this is not speculation. This is already happening, right now, in real time. So what do? First, understand that panic is not a strategy. Fear is information. But fear without direction is just paralysis dressed up as awareness. The goal is not to frighten you into inaction. The goal is to move you deliberately, intelligently, before the window closes. Here's what I do. Here's what I have always done when I see a major cycle turning. Diversify across countries, currencies, and asset classes. This is not a cliche. This is the single most powerful thing an individual can do in a world where one currency, one government, one system is under stress. Don't hold all your wealth in one nation's promises. History shows that nations break their promises, especially in stage 3. Own hard assets, gold, commodities, real assets that hold value when paper currency weakens. I'm not saying put everything in gold. I'm saying understand what gold represents, a store of value that governments cannot print. In every major currency crisis in history, hard assets preserved wealth when paper assets evaporated, to reduce exposure to long-term fixed income and depreciating currencies. When a government is printing money to cover its debts, and you are lending that same government money at a fixed interest rate, you are volunteering to be the person holding the bag. The math is simple. The currency weakens. Your returns weaken with it. In real terms, you are losing while thinking you are saving. Think globally. The decline of one empire is always the rise of another. The fall of the Dutch created space for the British. The weakening of the British created space for the Americans. The pressures on American dominance are creating space for others. Where those opportunities emerge, in Asia, in commodity-rich nations, in emerging markets that are positioning themselves outside the dollar system, that is where forward-thinking capital will flow. And here is the most important thing I can tell you. More important than any asset class. More important than any investment strategy. Wake up. Not metaphorically, literally. Most people sleepwalk through economic history. They trust that the system will protect them. They assume that because things have always recovered, they always will. They look at the stock market going up and feel safe. They look at their paycheck hitting their account and feel stable. But the frog doesn't feel the heat rising either. Mozart was one of the most brilliant musicians who ever lived. He died broke, not because he lacked talent, not because he lacked talent, but because he spent everything he earned and more. He lived for the moment. He ignored the future. And when the future arrived, it arrived without mercy. Don't be Mozart. Be the federal judge who lives on a modest salary, but saves deliberately, invests consistently, and retires wealthy. Not because of luck, not because of a windfall, but because of discipline applied over time, with clear eyes and a long horizon. The cycle does not punish the poor. It punishes the unprepared. There is a difference, and that difference is entirely within your control. I have watched this cycle my entire career. I have seen the warning signs ignored. I have watched brilliant people, educated, successful, hard-working people, get wiped out because they trusted comfort over clarity. Stage 2 is the last moment of relative normalcy before the transition accelerates. It is the last chapter before the plot turns. And the cruel irony of stage 2 is that it feels stable enough to ignore right up until the moment it doesn't. The debt will not fix itself. The printing presses will not stop on their own. The geopolitical tensions will not quietly resolve. The cycle will complete, as it always has, because that is what cycles do. The only variable is you, where you put your money, where you put your attention, whether you choose awareness over comfort, whether you act while there is still time to act, or whether you wait until the moment of rupture and scramble in the chaos like everyone else. History is not happening to you. You are living inside it, right now, in stage 2, with a window that will not stay open forever. The question is not whether stage 3 is coming. It is. The question is whether you will be ready, or whether history will simply add your name to the long, quiet list of people who saw the signs, felt the pressure, and did nothing. Because history doesn't warn the unprepared. It buries them